Okay, good morning. So we're up to Shin Chof Hey Seif Tes. So we said yesterday that if a non-Jewish person brought things for you from outside of the Techum, and there was no chashash that of Tzeda, of Lakita, and he just brought it from outside of the Techum, the person whom he brought it for is not allowed to benefit from it. Now we're saying, what about a case of a Safek? You don't know. You don't know where the person lives. The guy rocks up at your door and he brings a something for you. In its Safek, whether he bought it from Chutz Techum. What's the story? So it says the Mechaber, Im hu Safek im huva mechutz Techum. If it was a Safek, whether he brought it Chutz Techum, also it is also. And that is specifically if he's a non-Jewish person, she'ena shari imo be'ir, and therefore there's a likelihood that he's going to have brought it from outside the Techum. But if the non-Jewish person lives in the city, and the fruit are local, then ein lochash misafek. You don't have to worry that maybe he brought this fruit from outside of the Techum. And even if the fellow has two homes, one is inside the Techum and the other is outside, we can be toile lahakel, we can assume that it came from the house inside the Techum, and therefore he didn't violate the problem of Techumin, he didn't bring it from outside the Techum, and therefore there's no problem. Okay, says the Mishnah Berurah, Sifkat and Memzayin, Imhu Safek. So again, if he definitely brought it from outside the Techum, you got a problem. The person for whom he brought it he cannot benefit from it. But if we're not sure, says the Mechaber, Musafek imhuva mechutz Techum, it's also. Why? Says the Mishnah Berurah, Sifkat Memzayin, da'af b'sfeik d'rabbanan l'kula. Even though we generally say a Safek d'rabbanan is l'mekel, here it's also b'zeh mishum da'hav davar sheish l'matirin. Because just wait till Motzei Shabbos, and therefore you avoid all doubt. As we said previously, etc. If you take a look at 45, he's got a very fascinating point. He says, Omnam, legabe Safek pluksa, the dovim nechshev kabishel b'Shabbos, Eilai. You got a shaila in if something was cooked or not on Shabbos. Kosev le'el, shekiven she'issa le'honas b'melacha shenasa b'Shabbos, hurak midrabanan. The issa to benefit from something which was cooked on Shabbos is itself a drabanan. Ein lesser kiven shesofik drabanan l'kula. So how come over here we're saying that sofik huva mechutz Techum is also because dovash ish matirin, and even though it's a sofik drabanan we say dovash ish matirin, and there we should also say dovash ish matirin if it's a sofik whether it's mevushal or not. V'lo kasu sheish lahachim mishum dovash ish matirin Motzei Shabbos. So the Oz Nidbaru gives the following answer: Ubiya b'shad shuv Oz Nidbaru, mashikos b'shem Rabbi Akiva Eiga. Shirak b'sofik b'metzius machmirim b'dovash ish matirin. When are we machmir with a sofik? When it's a sofik in metzius. Did this come chutz Techum or not? And therefore, sofik in metzius, we apply the principle of dovash ish matirin, and we machmir. Avol b'sofik b'din. If we're sofik, we're not sure what the halacha is. Ein lahachmir afilu b'dovash ish matirin. K'shu sofik drabanan. In the case of a drabanan, we mekel. King calls it a Shagasari, and the Shagasari says the same thing. Okay, good. Let's go weiter. V'chanal, we did that. Okay, Sif Cotton Memches, Osa. So if it's Safek, if it's Mechutz Techum, we say it's Osa. Sosam Bezeh Kadas HaGoinim Da'ishim B'Safek. V'chein Sosam B'Sif Tesvov. V'chudloi Kadas HaMatzirin HaMuva B'Beis Yosef. V'udas HaYeshomrim Shi B'Sif Zayim, because there is a Yeshomrim in Sif Zayim, we said yesterday, that is Matzir. V'hinei. After the Daitem, even according to that opinion, Af Motzei Shabbos also B'Zeh B'Chdei Sheyaseh. Mikol Mokum Miskim Achrin Dinim Motzei Shabbos Ein Lahachim B'Zeh. In the case of a Safek, even though we say Safek is Osa, you don't have to worry about Kadesh Yasu. You don't have to take it that far. You don't have to wait for Kadesh Yasu after Shabbos. But even if it certainly came Chutz Techum, there are those who hold that you don't have to wait for Kadesh Yasu in any event. In the case of a Safek, when it comes to Kadesh Yasu, we can be reliant on that opinion. Okay, Ein Lochash Misafek, Memtes. So he said, if however we're not sure, he says, sorry, Dafka be the Yehudi who lives out of town. But if he lives, we're not sure, whatever. But if he lives in town and the fruit is from in town, then we don't have to be choishish for a Safek. Shaperis oilu havin chutz Techum. The other Abadamrin and Kanim su kan hoyu. No, we say on the contrary, the fruit are probably from here, and therefore there was no problem with Techum, and therefore you can have them. Vafilu, even if he's got one house in the city, one house out of the city, again with Toile Lahakel, says the Mishnah Berurah Sifkat Nun, maybe there is a Safek, he brought it from outside of the Techum. Mikol Makom Talin Lahakel, we're Toile Lahakel that he brought it from his house, from inside. The Atkan Le'asrin Misafek, Ela Be'eni Yehudi, She'en Lo Dira Klal B'Techatchum. We're only machmir in the case of a non-Jewish person who brought it for sure from outside of the Techum. Well, not for sure, where we know he lives outside. But we don't know if it's chutz Techum. Chashina d'shem chutz Techum heviu b'Shabbos. Aval b'zeh sheyesh lebayis b'toichat Techum lo mesafin klal shem heviu mechutz. In a situation where the guy has a house inside the Techum, we don't have to worry so much, and therefore we can assume that it came from the house inside the Techum. Damrin kanim su kan hoyu. This is where it came. This is where it was. Hainu b'abayis b'toichat Techum. Okay, good. Yud. So a non-Jewish person filled up some drink, some water from a bar which is in Rishus HaRabim, but the bar itself is Rishus HaYochid. So he has violated, as it were, I mean he's not mechuyev in any way, but he has done a melacha on Shabbos, as it were. He's taken it from a Rishus HaYochid, that's where the bar is, to Rishus HaRabim. And he did it for his own animal, for himself, for his own livestock. So mutar Yisrael lahashkas mehem lebehemtai. It's mutar for Yisrael. Imagine he brings a bucket from the bar and he puts it down for his animal to drink, and he says, "Here, go and let your animal drink as well." So it's allowed. V'hu she'ein hayudi makir. So long as this non-Jewish person doesn't recognize the Jewish person, because the lekalamecha shem yarba b'shvilei. Because if it's his neighbor or it's his friend, then we're worried that maybe he did a bit more in order to give his friend's animal. But if he did it for the benefit of Yisrael, also b'chol minei tashmish, then the Yisrael cannot have any benefit from this water. Even for another Yisrael. Because l'maisa he did it for Yisrael, and therefore you can't. He did a melacha, he did a nissa for Reuven, so even Shimon can't use it. If, however, he transferred not from a yochid to a rabbin, but to a yochid to a carmelis, then mutza la'achar shelo mile b'shvilei. Then that would be allowed, because at the end of the day, he didn't do it for him. He did it for Reuven, not for Shimon. That would be allowed. Okay, says the Mishnah Berurah, she'ein Yehudi makirei. It's only okay if the Ein Yehudi didn't do it. He wasn't makir the Yehudi. Because the Makiro, says Mishnah Berurah, if he did recognize him, even though the guy did it for himself, it would still not be allowed. Because we make a gezerah that maybe the Ein Yehudi drew a bit more water for the Yisrael. Also, even if he drew the water not in front of the Yisrael, it's still also. Even though he's got to know that the Yisrael needed that, and then we can assume that perhaps he was marbe b'shvilai, b'makiroi. That's makira v'ayin shamoid mashekosov b'zeh. Okay, but if he did do it for the Yisrael, then it's also for the Yisrael b'chol minei tashmisha. It says in Yishmurin on base, Hainu. Not only for drinking or for your animal for drinking, but also that's certainly also. Let's say he wanted to wash up his kalim or something else, even now he can't do it. And even if he did it for Reuven, then even Shimon can't do it. To give him this avid bu malacha deraisa b'shvil Yisrael, since the malacha deraisa, i.e. Hotzah, was done for Reuven, also l'chol Yisrael is also for Shimon as well. For Chanal b'sivov, va'afil be'erev Motzei Shabbos yeh osach b'chdei sheyeh shus litlois chadoshim v'chanal. And in that situation where we know that a malacha was done, he drew water for Reuven. Not only Reuven can't have it, Shimon can't have it, and both have got to wait. Okay, but then the Mechaba said, but if he did it not a deraisa, he did it drabonim, from a Rishus HaYochid, the bar is a Rishus HaYochid to a carmelis, then we say that mutter la'acher shelo mila b'shvilei. Then, so long as he didn't do it if he did it for Reuven, let's say, then Shimon can use it. Eina ela melacha drabanan, because here it's a melacha drabanan, says Mishnah Berurah and Dalet. Therefore, mutter Yisrael acher, it's mutter for Yinad Yisrael v'chanal b'sifches. Okay, good. Now says the Ramah, v'yesh mekilin v'oimrim. There are those who are making and say, da'af imhuva derech Rosh Hashanah. Even if the guy drew the water in Rosh Hashanah and took it derech Rosh Hashanah l'tzorech Yisrael, mutter la'adam lishtos mehem. It's okay to drink from it. Why? Because at the end of the day, what is the Yisrael benefited? He could go to the Rishus HaYochid and drink it there. So what benefit has he received really? And therefore, yesh matin aflachat tchila. V'chein nagu hetzalema aflachat tchila l'nyudi lahavi sheichar oishad dvarim derech kamelis oibelei eruv. Afal pish yesh lahachmim b'dava. Even though you should be machmir in the matter, mikol makom ein limchos b'yad makin l'tzorech Shabbos b'shas hatchag. For those people who tell the non-Jewish person to bring something, derech kamelis through a drabanan zikahitzah, for tzorech Shabbos or shas hatchag. Yesh lahakal ba'amir le'en Yehudi l'tzorech. We allow amir le'akum for a tzorech. Commission is part of Simon Shin Zayim v'chol shkein b'chei agav, and certainly over here. Okay, it says in Mishnah Berurah, Hayal ve'efsha. Because this is not really considered getting hana from a malacha done by an en Yehudi, because he could go down to the bar and drink himself. And do it without Chil Shabbos. The Dafka Behemte also, because he can't get his sheep to go down to the bar. But if the guy brought water from the river, and really you could take your animal and take it to the river, then what have you benefited? So you could go to it's in a way that the animal could go down, or you could go and benefit from the water without any Chil Shabbos. So what? Because there's no benefit that you've received. You could have gotten to the bar directly. That's not called nene melech Shabbos, because you could have benefited from that melacha without any Chil Shabbos. Avol in the pamazeh heavy and yudi ma'im labehemto mibar shu sheyochid le'emed b'shirabim the elu ha'ma'im ef shlashkos beheta. If it came from a bar where the animal could not have drunk from it, even though there's a river down, further away in town where the animal could have gone to drink, at the end of the day, that it came from a bar, and therefore one should avoid that. Okay, Leilech Sham. Where was that going on? Yeah, because the reason why the Ramah is Mekel, because you could have gone to that bar and taken the water yourself. Says the Mishnah Berurah in Nunvav, Vim ein ha-Yisrael yochel leilech sham b'pnei sakonas drachim. Now, if the Yisrael couldn't have got to that bar, also gam l'de'azu, then the whole heta of the Ramah has been shot away. If you could have traveled there because of sakonas drachim or other restrictions, then your whole heta is gone, even and then therefore you would not be allowed to do it. Indian dinner. Now we've got two opinions. So we've got two opinions. Again, what are we saying? A non-Jewish person gets some water from a bar, which is in Rosh Hashanah, and he takes it to Rosh Hashanah. So then the Mechaber said you can't benefit from it. If he brought it, he did that because Gezer Shemiyab B'Shvilei. The Ramah brings a lenient opinion because you could have gone to the bar, and what benefit have you got? Says the Halacha, says the Mishnah Berurah, in dinner, according to Halacha, Ha'ikka Kader Rishena. We're machmir like the first opinion, Hudas Hakol Rishen, because at the end of the day that's the opinion of all the Rishonim. V'chein mashmir agrova Tosefes Shabbos. V'rak l'tzorech gadol, only for a very extenuating situation, l'tzorech Shabbos, yesh lismech al zeh lahakel. We can be reliant on the lenient opinion of the Ramah. Of Motzei Shabbos yesh lahatzeh miyad b'chol gavni. And Motzei Shabbos it certainly would be okay. V'yesh matirin ha'achreinim nitzchu ma'od b'tamadova. The Achreinim, they question the heter of the Ramah. Even if you want to be lenient, that's only b'di'evet. But that doesn't give you the green light to allow Amir Lein Yehudi in a Karis, he's still the guy is still doing a drabonon. The kolshkem b'shusarabim is certainly not in the shusarabim. The gama shetzin hamitzayin alzeh kolboy, and the mitzayin says the guy who the printer whoever who added in the sources, the references, he wrote the kolboy. Yeah, one of the Rishonim. Kosav Magen Avram the Lenin says there kolboy. It's not found there in the kolboy. Va'agra kosav dudas ravya hamuv bebeis Yosef simen shin zayin ein sham. Okay. Nun ches, what's this going on? To bring beer or some other things, derech karmelis. Hainu dover shetzorich Shabbos k'tzas. Yeah, there's some need for Shabbos. Derech karmelis. B'darki Moshe mashma denagu lehakel af b'shus harabim tzilan. Samach. Afal pi sheyesh lahachmir demitam shus to shus ein matir lechatchila rak b'tzorich gadol. For shvus to shvus, to tell a non-Jewish person, which is one shvus, to do a drabonim, which is the second shvus, we only allow lechatchila b'tzorich gadol, only dvar mitzvah gemura, kagoyin shu tzorich hamashke lekiddush, I need kiddush wine, so then we would tell him to do a drabonim, etc. Or lahavi atavshel shehu hacham, shehuchen lisoy b'Shabbos, or to bring the children or something like that. But ein limchos, you don't have to protest against those who rely on this opinion. I will call upon him lo yitin mos ein Yehudi al zeh, but don't pay him for it. V'gam lo yitin kol hakli liyodei, and don't let him take the kli. Don't let him give you the kli and you take it in your hands. V'lo yekablim miyod beis havoso kadesh lo yasa Yisrael hakir v'anocha. So we've spoken about this a few times. If you look at 52. He says, right, you've got your Amazon delivery, or you've got some posts coming on Shabbos, and the non-Jewish person, the postman, or the delivery person knocks on the door and says, here's your parcel. So, Kosav le'el, you say to him, please put it down. If he gives it, he puts it in your hands, you've done the third aspect. There's Akira, there's Hitzah, Havara, and then there's Hanocha. So you've done it. I had it a few weeks ago. We had a non-Jewish, the guy came with a package. So we said to him, we opened the door, and I recognized the fellow. I said, well, you know the score. And he puts it down, then he wished me a good Shabbos. He did. Yeah, not Jewish fellow, but he knows. If you put your hands out. No, even if you don't. Even if he brings it in, you've done the Akira. Because if he's still in motion, and you take it from him, that's the Akira, that's the Hanocha. Still, you've done one element of the crime. Yeah. Okay, let's start Shabbos Samach Beis. Kosva Achreinim to Mikol Mokum Ein Lahakel Ela B'Sheichar Chiyetz B'Advarim Hatzrichim B'Shabbos. Things you need on Shabbos. Beer She'iyef Sheliyos B'Ladom Ela B'Doich K'tzas. It's difficult to be without it. Avol Dvarim. Some of my boys in my shul would love this. How can you be without a beer on Shabbos? Avol Dvarim She'ein Tzrichim Kol Kach could go in Paris V'Chiyetz B'Zeh. Things which are not so essential. Fruit, for example, they'd love that as well. Ein lahakel va'afilim u'roitz lisanig bohem lekoved Shabbos. V'lo yofa oisen ha'mashalchin al yedei in Yehudi migdonis la'irech u'lechoson chutz la'erev. And it's not very. He's not very happy with those people who rely on this lenient opinion. They send various packages through a non-Jewish person chutz la'erev. There's no real heter for it because again we only allow amira la'amira, amira la'akum, shvus to shvus. A non-Jewish person to do a hitzad rabbanon in extenuating situations. Okay, so we've seen two things today. Number one, if it's a Safek that it came chus Techum, we say it's also because it's dovashesh matir and you should wait. If, however, he's got some sort of, you can be toilet in any way. For example, it could be that he's got a house inside the city and we can be toilet on that. Then we are mekel. And second of all, a non-Jewish person who filled up some water or some from a bar, which is in Rosh Yochid, and he brought it to Rosh Rabim, then the person, then we answer that because we're Shemi Yabe B'Shviloi, and even though the Ramah is Mekel, the minhag seems to be not like the Ramah. Okay, Peseder.